don't want to be strong like man who look pretty. I want to be strong like bitch that fight bears in the forest.
Welcome to another episode of Bitch vs. Bear with your hosts, Amber, me, and me, Sydney, co-owners of Shield Maiden Training Co. This is a show where we bitch, laugh, and chat about all things fitness and wellness related to the women in the LGBTQIA plus community.
The women.
To the women. To the women. To the walls. We're millennials. That's like our theme song.
It kind of is. It's awful. I have some regrets.
I know, right?
Okay.
I have a funny story about that song for another time.
Great. We'll put that on the listener topics. It'll be our bonus episode.
It had to do with an under 21 club, but an over 18 club in foam.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, this week, appropriately enough, I guess, we're continuing our discussion of work-life balance.
Yes.
We will be focusing on navigating work-life balance as a parent.
Because I can only imagine. I know how much I struggle with it as a just married with dogs.
Yeah. No, thank you. So striking a good work-life balance as an individual or a couple can be tough enough. And often feels like a moving target. More than 50 million Americans are juggling jobs and parenthood, which just seems insane.
Yikes.
Not a choice I would make.
I like how we were talking before this, and I was like, I don't know if parents make up the majority of the population, but I know that they make up a significant portion. And then
like
you
a
said,
lot.
50 million, and I'm like, oh, right, significant portion of the population.
There's a lot of people that have children.
Yeah, and all the more power to them for all the reasons we discussed during our Parenthood month, but also now like work-life balance and parenthood.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so before trying to strategize ways to balance work and parenthood, as always, let's identify core areas that provide the most challenges.
Okay, I like
you
that.
first.
Sweet. So I talk a lot about these in just like everyday life, and I think it's really fitting that this is one of those like sticking points for a lot of people. Transitions.
Oh, transitions.
Yeah, they're tough. They are. So the transitions, that challenge tends to occur most frequently and regularly. Like it's the one that is the most prevalent, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you're going back to work after your parental leave ends, or kids are going back to school after a summer break has ended.
Mm-hmm.
But it can also happen when you come back from, say, like a business trip, and then suddenly you have to pivot from that like work mode to caregiver mode, or even just something as simple as like, I'm hiring a new babysitter, but now you have to integrate them into your family's routine. Like all of those are big transitions. And it's just, they throw a wrench in everything.
Yeah. And like I could even see, since we're talking about this work-life balance, even just the transition of coming home from work, or if you're working from home, finishing work for the day, having to transition into now I'm a parent.
Yeah.
I have to leave work behind and now I'm a parent. Or like if you are work from home and are also the caregiver for your children, how do you balance and make that transition probably several times a day?
Yeah, exactly. So like it is the one that just happens all the time. And I think if you can recognize that that's where it causes a lot of friction, you can start to like make a plan for how to deal with those transitions a little bit better. And it's just, I just keep going back to, I can't even imagine. Like, it's just, I think the big ones for me is like, I even feel this as a non-parent, like the transition from summer back to like going into fall. Like even for me, I'm like, okay, now I have to pivot, and I don't have kids going to school.
What are you pivoting to?
I'm just like
pumpkin spice lattes?
Yeah, pumpkin spice lattes. You have to pivot out of that mindset. Like you have to put away your Birkenstocks and pull out your Blundstones. It's a big transition.
For the lesbians?
Yes. Yeah. They get it. They understand.
For us basic white bitches, it's putting away your sandals and taking out your top boots.
It's going from
and your scarves.
So it's going from your iced latte to your iced pumpkin spice latte.
Ugh.
from your
My iced dirty chai latte to my hot dirty chai latte.
there you go. Yes, that transition. It can be a struggle. Just so you know. Okay, what's another sticking point, Amber?
Practicalities.
Mm.
So these are the to-dos and logistics of everyday life. Where and when you get your pumpkin spice latte. Making the doctor's appointments, rushing a kid to whatever practice they have to go to. It seems like they always have things they have to go practice. I don't know.
They practice a lot.
You might have business meetings that run late. You might get that call at work that your kid's sick. You've got to go pick them up, take them home. Now what? You're transitioning again.
Always transitioning.
There's lots of practicalities to think of and that interrupt either your home life or your work life.
Yeah. So I think those two, I like that those two are the top ones because I think they're the ones that most people can identify for themselves and be like, oh yeah, that happens all the time. So this one I think is probably one that that a lot of parents might not be able to identify, but happens. And when we label it, they'll probably be like, oh yeah, but loss. So this challenge involves a kind of like mourning.
Yeah. Maybe
the baby took their first steps while you were at work.
Oh.
Or maybe you weren't picked to lead a project at work because you're focused on less hours. And so you've made the conscious decision to actually be more present at home. So there's always going to be like that give and take of like, if I'm spending time in one place, the loss of missing things in the other arena.
FOMO.
Yeah, exactly. That's what FOMO, yes. The millennials and their FOMO.
We all feel it.
Mm-hmm.
For those who are not millennials, that's fear of missing out.
Thank you for labeling that. I like that. It's like, yeah, just like we did with our pumpkin spice lattes.
Yes. Okay, so identity. Parents might experience this challenge when grappling with the inevitable either or thinking, like we just talked about, and personal conflict that comes with working and parenthood. Are you like this phrase? I read this phrase earlier and was like, what? Are you a hard charger or a nurturing, accessible parent? Which is right and which is you? You wish you had clearer answers, don't we all?
Don't we all? Yeah. I mean,
you might, I don't know, maybe you do have clear answers. You might wish you had clearer answers.
Yeah. I think even non-parents, I think we all struggle with identity of like what, I've seen it on Instagram a lot recently of like, how do I choose just one? Like, I want to be the girl boss, but I also want to be the like homesteader, but I like, there's so many things that you could do. Like it's hard to pick just one. And I think coming to grips with the fact that your identity is in fact a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Rolled up into. So you could be the hard charger at work who is like constantly driving the projects and being that, but you could also be the nurturing, like, what is it? I forget the term that we used when we were talking about like the Swedish terms for parenting.
No, I don't think gentle parenting was what.
Yeah, but it's essentially
the
same, along the same lines.
Yeah.
And finally, one of the challenges I think we all struggle with, but can probably know that parents have an added burden is just like overall communication. So this challenge, when you're a working parent, you have a lot more that you have to discuss with your partner that you might be raising a child with, or your family if you're a single parent, like schools, your boss, everybody needs communication to know that they're on the same kind of wavelength. But even it can start even sooner. Like when you're announcing a pregnancy, like who do you communicate that to? Like, do you communicate that to your work?
Right.
Are they going to be supportive of that? Who do you actually tell? Asking your boss for like more flexible working arrangements, negotiating like daycare, like you don't get off work until 5, but daycare closes at 4.
Rude.
Yeah, right. Or even just like then when the child is here, you have to communicate with them, right? Like
which is really hard when they're tiny.
Yeah.
They don't communicate well.
They don't. And they don't understand. And you have to like really work with them. Like, how do you, communicate to your 5-year-old? Like, I have to go on a trip for work. And no, you can't come with me. And no, I won't be around.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard enough when I have to have that conversation with my dog. And they're like, okay, somebody will be here to feed me.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think just like having those constructive conversations can be a real challenge, and navigating who you have to communicate with.
Yeah.
When.
Exactly. Yeah.
Feels kind of like a turntable. Just like, wee.
Okay. So if you are currently struggling to find that work-life balance in parenthood, it's important to remember that there is no one-size-fits-all strategy. As with most things we talk about, prioritizing what's important to you and not trying to replicate what others do or say is, I think, most important.
Yeah.
And like the best avenue to go down.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all look to others for counseling or advice. And I know maybe sometimes people like grandparents, like people who have raised children, have a lot to offer, even when you don't ask for it.
They have a lot of thoughts on the subject.
And I think it's important to remember that, the time and frame in which they raise children is very different from when you're raising your children. And so there's, different expectations. We have Microsoft Word. We can like we don't need to be in the office 8 hours to accomplish what we can accomplish now. But 25, 35, 40 years ago, yeah, they had to work 9 to 5 every day, and we were fine, I guess.
I mean, we all made it.
I
think the important thing there is, other people who've gone through this, whether it's family members, friends, coworkers, they might have some valid advice, but they might also have some things that are not going to work for your family.
Yeah.
So, take what works and leave what doesn't.
Exactly.
Yeah. So to start this process, we advise figuring out your own goals for what a healthy work-life balance is going to look like for you and your family. If you have a family, I don't know. I guess if you're a parent, we're talking about parents, you probably have a family of some sort.
Whatever,
at least a child.
Whatever that looks like to you.
So ask yourself what you need. What do I need to work better and more efficiently? What do I need to rest? I notice that word is not in all capitals, but it should be. What do I need to rest better? And what do I need to support my children or family? Or family.
I think I like these 3 as a suggestion because it wasn't like, I don't know, like arbitrary, like, what are your goals? It's like gives you a framework. And I think these are all of the important things. They covered like, okay, what do I need to do?
Yeah, I love it.
I definitely love the rest one.
I think it's so important and it's so overlooked. It's like, it's that hustle culture that we, or at least folks of our age, were raised in coming into our working years.
Yeah. And I think, once you've clearly defined your own goals, like, don't forget to incorporate that, communication sticking point, like incorporate your partner, incorporate the family dynamics, incorporate those people in, really work together to align them. Because like if you sit down and you come up with your goals, they might be different from your spouse or your partner who is also actively raising your child. And you're going to have to compromise a little bit.
But I think if your children are old enough, pull them in too.
Yeah.
We're all about, setting the example.
Yeah.
Show them what it looks like. Show them how to manage work-life balance.
And you can frame it as simply as like, okay, for you, school is work.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's
their job.
That's their job. They go for pretty much 8 hours. They sometimes
plus all their practices.
Yeah. Plus all their practices. A lot of times they have to bring work home. How do you manage that? Like it's setting a good example in that way. And definitely if they're of the age where you can actually start to have that conversation. I recommend it with like the 5-year-old, but you can probably start with a 5-year-old.
I think you could put it in simpler terms for sure. You can put it in age appropriate terms and start those habits. Like we talked about with the exercise and fitness routines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our tips for kind of like getting started once you've clearly defined your goals is like, okay, one, how do I define whose responsibility is what within the house? Because taking care of a home is time consuming. And it shouldn't, we don't want it to be when you think about work life, I don't want taking care of the home to be the only aspect in your life outside of work. Yeah. Yeah. So we note that it can be just as much as a traditional 9 to 5 managing a household. So while many folks now have hybrid or flexible schedules where you can kind of get some of those home things done while you're working, I put up air quotes, when you put the extra load of laundry in and that kind of stuff, norms are shifting and the expectation to maintain a home no longer falls just to the women of the household. Yes. It's important to engage all of your family and help everybody understand their roles and responsibility in taking care of the house, not just the chores, but like the maintenance and the upkeep too, because there's more than just like doing the dishes. So don't be afraid to delegate tasks. Yes. Delegation is incredibly important. And seek out help from your partner or other family members. Like if you've got a really handy father-in-law who's like, I would love to come clean your gutters for you. Maybe sit with them and be like, can we come up with a schedule? Can you do that in the spring and the fall? Like, yeah, my partner is afraid of heights. Yes. Yeah. And encourage your kids to take on age appropriate responsibilities. They can feel more empowered when you do that, of like giving them the responsibility. I always talk a lot about like your responsibility should match your freedom. So if you're starting to give your kid more freedom, they should have responsibilities that match that. Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's really important to take ownership of the space that you live in, exist in. It's like, it's yours too.
Yeah.
Like it shouldn't fall to one person in the household to take care of it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really about, I think, if you can teach them stewardship of like, if we do the things we're supposed to, this house provides us comfort and, a safe place and all of those things. But it does require stuff from us too. Right. Like, yeah, we got to clean the gutters. Yes, we have to check the air filters, like those kinds of things too.
Yeah. And that, I mean, it's only going to set them up for success in the future too.
Yeah.
Like when they move out and are on their own or with roommates or a spouse or whatever living situation they end up in, like they're going to have those habits instilled to take care of the space that they're in.
Yeah. I mean,
and their roommates and spouses will thank them for it.
They will. I think that was one of the things that I think about. Like it made me a better renter.
Yeah.
Like and a better like college roommate of like, okay, I know I need to take care of these things.
Yep.
And I never felt like, oh, I pay my landlord money and that's the end of our transaction. It's like, no, I'm also responsible for this living environment.
I pay my landlord money for the use of this space.
Yes.
And it is my responsibility to maintain. I mean, not maintain, it is their responsibility to like fix big things, but keep it in decent or working order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, anyways, don't want like cockroach. Oh, yeah.
Thoughts about that. Okay.
Right.
So you also want to understand that you can't be present at both work and home life at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah. Even if you work from home.
Correct.
Yes. So your professional self and your parent/home self need to set clear boundaries. I love that, setting clear boundaries. You need to find ways to be fully present while parenting, obviously, but also while you're working, obviously. It's easy to fall into the trap of sending an email while preparing the kids' dinner or to work while they're taking a nap. build boundaries for yourself at work. I think we talked about this last week, like finding clear boundaries and transition times between work and home life. So, learn to delegate tasks.
And you can practice that at home with your family, with chores and maintenance.
Say no. And remember that no is a complete sentence.
It is.
And advocate for a more manageable workload at work and at home.
Yeah.
Same goes for building boundaries at home. Silence your email notifications, put up out of office messages. Or, if you do have an office outside your home, leave your laptop at the office.
That's a surefire way to not get on your laptop.
Or if you're fortunate enough to have a room dedicated as an office in your home, maybe like shut and lock and block off that door when you're done.
I heard of a friend of mine who works from home, and they use like their spare room, like many of us do, as their home office. And they put up a sign like you at shops that is like, we'll be back. So when they walk by it, it's like, we'll return at 8 a.m. So they're not inclined to go into that room. They're like, oh, it's closed. Yeah, it's closed.
Business is not open for business right now.
And I was like, that is such a fun idea of like, yeah. And so like, they have people come over, I guess, and are like, what? Sorry, that business is closed. We can't talk about that. That is a firm boundary.
I love that. I do not have a spare room to do that in, but I could like put a curtain around my desk, like close the curtains like a shower.
Yeah, I think it'd be hysterical.
Anyways, the most important thing, as always, is to give yourself compassion and grace, knowing that sometimes home will bleed into work and vice versa.
Yeah, it's good. It's bound to happen.
We're humans. Yeah, it's okay. Be gentle with yourself.
So one of our sticking points, one of our challenges was communication. And so this tip and trick is remember to communicate and ask for support.
What?
So work on building and strengthening your support system. It may consist of friends, families, neighbors, colleagues, supervisors, or even professional services, like your therapist. Maybe, honestly, it's a home cleaning service.
Oh my God, yes.
So like when you're asking for support, make sure you're actually like looking at the goals that you set up at the top of this and find solutions to help support whatever those are. So like maybe your mornings are super hectic and you struggle getting the kids to school on time. So maybe what you can do is when you're asking for support, go ask the friends and, other parents at the school and say, can we try carpooling?
Yeah.
Like you all do pickups in the morning. I do pickups in the evening, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Or see if, your sitter is available for school drop-offs.
Yeah.
I put this one in here because this one drives Shelby crazy on her commute to work is don't forget that the bus is available. A lot of people have gone to dropping their kids off at school, which is great, but it can be a real struggle. And parents can often feel like, well, all the other parents do it. Why can't I manage it? But maybe your work-life balance, that's just isn't the thing that you can do. So like, it's okay if your kids get on the bus. It's a great way for them to socialize and it provides transportation.
And it provides your kids that transition time too, that we talked about last week. We talked about transition and like how I don't commute to work anymore, but when people commute to and from work, that commute time can be a good transition between their home and work life.
Yeah. I was talking to, we have a lot of teacher friends, and I was talking to one of my teacher friends, and they said one of the things they notice is about the kids who actually do take the bus to school. They tend to be easier to transition in the morning in homeroom because they've already had their socialization time on the bus with friends. And so the kids who are coming in the car then take longer to transition into homeroom, into study, into school time because they haven't had that
social time.
Yeah. And I was like, that's fascinating. And of course it makes sense. Like when you think about it, like, I did half of my socializing on the bus and the other half at lunch.
Yeah.
And I was able to focus in class because I had already seen my friends. I had already chatted. I already told them the neighborhood gossip on the bus ride.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I never really thought about that, but it's a really good point. And it can also cut down on congestion around the school. Time it takes parents to drop off and pick up. Like, I can only imagine like an entire school's worth of children like having to be picked up,
Right?
the amount of traffic that would cause. My goodness, just take the bus.
Yeah. And, it gets you maybe an extra 30, 45 hour at work on either end.
Mhm.
So maybe you don't have to ask for quite as much flexible time because your kids are able to take the bus and you can have the sitter meet them, or you're at the
Yeah.
grandparent or a neighbor meet them at the bus stop and walk them
Yeah.
home. So yeah, it's just, again, aligning those things, like
Mhm.
really find that sticking point and align it with your goals. And I'm like, okay, if the thing I need to like balance my work life is more time at one and less time at the other, look at ways like the
Yeah.
bus to help
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Look at, those support systems and strategies for gaining that time while still being present and available for both
Mm-hmm.
when appropriate.
When appropriate.
Okay. So remember that achieving the perfect work life balance is an ongoing process and it may not always be in perfect balance. And that's hard. I feel like that's hard to reconcile because when we say that term balance, I think we automatically think that it's even and equal.
Yes.
And it's not. It's going to be a give and take. One is going to need more than the other sometimes, and I think it's going to fluctuate.
Yeah, I think so.
So you need to be flexible and be willing to adapt as your circumstances change, as they will, because that's life. And again, don't be too hard on yourself if things don't always go as planned, because they're not going to always go as planned.
No,
because that's also life. Prioritizing your well being and your family's needs is the most important aspect of navigating that healthy work life balance as a parent.
I like this episode
This is a good episode.
because I think there's a lot of takeaways, even for those of us who aren't parents. It's like, okay, cool. And it also, I don't know, it made me kind of open my eyes of like, what could I do as a support system for people who do have kids? Like, yeah, I got a pretty flexible work schedule. Like, yeah, I could volunteer to be the
Neighborhood get her off of the bus person.
Yeah, I'm the bus stop manager. Can I wear a vest?
Oh my gosh, yes.
I love it.
See it now.
My whole neighborhood's like, yes.
Sydney and the dogs just walking around the neighborhood, rounding up the children, taking them to the bus.
Perfect.
Love it. All right. So that's a wrap for this week. Woohoo. It's very exciting. Tune in next week for the last episode of September.
That's crazy.
Right? So weird. So weird. We'll wrap up our discussion on work-life balance. And then in October, we have some fun listener submitted topics.
I know. I'm so excited.
I know you are.
September and October might be my favorite months thus far.
Really?
Yeah. I really like the work-life balance because I think it's a thing that's like, it doesn't matter who you are. We all struggle with it.
I mean, yeah.
And then just talking about things other people like submit, I think is kind of cool. And it's like, I don't know. I'm just like super excited. Though when we get to our holiday December episodes, I do have a ton of fun with those.
Yes, you do.
We have to figure out how to I don't know. I want to dress like an elf for one or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Thanks.
We also need to decide what we're going to do to celebrate our 1 year of podcasting in November.
1 year of podcasting.
Right?
That's crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
That's coming up real fast.
Listeners, what should we do to celebrate our 1 year of podcasting?
Please say cupcakes.
It's like an episode of Drunk History.
Oh no. Cupcakes and bourbon. Bourbon cupcakes.
Bourbon cupcakes. All right.
Cupcakes and cocktails.
Cupcakes and cocktails. And what should we talk about?
I don't know.
Our favorite episodes or least favorite episodes?
That could be fun. A recap of
A recap?
We
Our
do have
favorite books we've read this year?
We do have I think November is a month with a bonus episode week.
Ooh.
That could be fun. That could be, we could use that for our like 1 year anniversary party.
Done. Sold.
Yes.
Yes.
Cue music.